Stoicism has quickly become one of the most popular and therefore most criticized philosophies in the world, which is strange. You don't tend to see Gen Z poring over the scripts of Confucius and Machiavelli, and yet something about Zeno's treatise on the nature of mind has captivated people. But with great admiration always comes great criticism, as there are countless videos and articles arguing why Stoicism sucks. And let me put my cards on the table here. I don't like Stoicism either, but even I have to admit that most of these criticisms aren't very good. The worst of these will just display cringe influencers misusing Stoicism and then act like that's somehow a legitimate critique of the philosophy itself. But even a lot of the more good faith critiques will just misunderstand what Stoicism is all about, saying that Stoicism is about denying the world or denying your emotions, even though to anyone who's actually read it, that's literally the opposite of what Stoicism's for. Because simply put, as a critic of Stoicism, I have to admit that its philosophy is basically perfect. Denying surface level pleasures to become the best person you can be is the best way to live your life. Epictetus's dichotomy of control, in which you're instructed to split the world into things you can and can't control and then solely focus your desire on the former, is a great way of letting things go and reducing your suffering by forgetting false desires without having to become a full-on Buddhist monk. Stoicism's theory just works. And so if I have this much good to say about it, why do I still call myself a critic of Stoicism? Because simply put, theory is not the only thing that matters in a philosophy. Stoicism is ostensibly a system of self-improvement. And therefore the metric I judge it on is not its ability to make accurate statements about the world, but its ability to, well, improve people's lives. Because Stoicism's real problem isn't its philosophy, it's its practice. And so to make this point more clear, I'm going to use the analogy of drug testing. In drug tests, there are two types of surveys that normally get done: control trial studies and natural style studies. A control trial study is exactly what it sounds like. The doctors carefully control every aspect of the patient's lives to make sure that everything is consistent. They know when you're taking the medicine, they know exactly how much you're taking, which allows them to eliminate any irrelevant variables and focus in on the one thing they care about: whether or not the drug is effective if taken correctly. But there's just one small problem with control trial studies. Some people don't take drugs correctly. Let's imagine that there is a drug that is exceedingly effective if taken once a day for 20 days, but will not work whatsoever if you forget even one day. The reality is that the average person can be forgetful. They will forget things from time to time. And therefore, this drug, which is wildly effective in trials, probably won't end up actually helping anyone when you put it into the world. Therefore, a second type of trial is required if you want to truly understand the nature of a drug: naturalistic trials. These trials more accurately measure what will happen when you actually release the drug, because we give the drugs to the patients, we tell them to take them, and then we don't actually check whether or not they do. Which means that small discrepancies of people being human and making mistakes, forgetting to take the drugs at the exact right time or the exact right doses, is taken into account in the data. Or in other words, control trial studies tell us whether or not a drug is effective in ideal conditions, but naturalistic studies tell us whether or not a drug is effective in real conditions. So let's apply this rationale back to Stoicism. Imagine if we could have some kind of control trial study in which we measured people's brains and made sure that we forced them to have the exact right thoughts that Stoicism prescribes. They were rigorously virtuous, they were selfless, they only cared about things that were directly in control. This control trial of Stoicism would undoubtedly turn its patients into absolute machines, and we know this is the case because it's been done before, because what I am describing is military drills. When people are controlled and forced to adopt something like Stoic principles, they work. But of course, the average person can't live their life in the military, and so instead what we need to turn to is a naturalistic trial of Stoicism, which just empirically hasn't worked very well. Hundreds of thousands of people have bought Stoic books and tried to live the life of Stoicism, but broadly speaking, we don't have any results saying that these people have radically improved their lives. No doubt, there are a few ubermenschers among this group, people who read Stoicism and completely transformed themselves, but be honest with me, when you think of the average fan of Stoicism, do you think of a kind-hearted person who meditates? Or do you think of a cringe 17-year-old? Stoicism fails the test of naturalistic studies, and I can actually tell you why. Let's compare Stoicism to two other systems of self-improvement: Buddhism and Alcohol Anonymous. AA and Buddhism, similar to Stoicism, both have detailed philosophies on the human mind. Buddhism tells you the nature of desire and how you can transcend this using meditation, while AA has a detailed and accurate map of the mind of the average addict. But unlike Stoicism, these systems of philosophy have consistently shown themselves to be able to utterly transform people's lives. Thousands of people every year go through the AA program and are able to defeat their addiction, then becoming sponsors for the next generation of people going through the program. Meanwhile, Buddhism does the same. Its meditation practices have been neurologically proven to be effective, and there are countless religious communities who cite Buddhism as the primary force of good in their lives. And it's this second strength, community, practice, and ritual, that Stoicism lacks. There simply isn't a Stoic community. Sure, there's like Stoicon and a few school groups, but there are no IRL group of people who have been around for generations who consistently meet up to talk about Stoicism. There are no prescribed rituals that have been tried and tested over hundreds of years and iterated upon through mimetic Darwinism to ensure their effectiveness. Stoicism does not have its own culture and community. It lacks rituals and shibboleths to distinguish an in-group from an out-group. It has no symbols of legitimacy or standardized tests that can raise people up to the level of elders and mentors. Stoicism's philosophy is basically perfect. What it lacks is the well-tuned mimetic organism developed over generations that's been proven to actually transform people's lives using community. But when the average person intuitively feels that Stoicism doesn't work, they lack the understanding of ritual to adequately explain why, and so just assume that the problem must be in philosophy. They then post hoc biasly look for problems where none exist, and then assume that that was the real reason it was failing. And so if there's one thing I want you to take away from this video, it's that when critiquing philosophies of self-improvement, whether or not something works and whether or not something is true are two entirely different metrics with different ways of measuring. When David Goggins is on a run and he tells himself, "This run is the only thing that matters, I can do anything," those statements are, strictly speaking, false. But they've been proven to be effective at helping him finish. Meanwhile, the statement 2 + 2 = 4 is effective. Similarly, self-improvement cannot be done alone. It needs a community. So unless a philosophy is suitable at building a community, it functionally doesn't have anything to offer you. Reading Stoicism in your bedroom won't improve your life, but engaging with yoga or Christian or Buddhist or artistic communities will. But if you have disagreed with anything I've said in this video, make sure to let me know either in the comments or on Instagram and Twitter, because I always try and respond to my DMs. And if you want to keep the conversation going, we can even organize a Discord call sometime. On this channel, I love exploring topics from philosophy to self-improvement to love and virtue and God and community. And so if you're here for those conversations, make sure to subscribe, because this channel is very new and you subscribing would be super helpful in me growing and getting my message to more people. Thanks for watching and Godspeed.